People always ask me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause people always ask me all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions. They wanna know my play. They wanna.
Hey, it's been a long time. You know, I can't even see. I had my glasses. I guess I'll find them. Hey, Damani, my glasses in there? Welcome back, man. It's been a long time, man. We got a special guest here, but we got the same old. Thank you, Damani, my special guest. Cory, man. What's up, man? Cory Williams, man. He used to be my neighbor in Florida, man, and we've known each other since at least maybe 2016, and he's from Montgomery, and so we Cory, man, what's up, man? He's in the Air Force. Who are you, man? How are you?
Man, I'm good, man. It's been a good minute since we actually talked. I was so happy that we connected again. I don't believe what happened this weekend led us back together, but if it is, then I'm definitely glad that we were able to hook up again, man. Pleasure to be here. First time caller, first time guest, so ready to get into it.
Hey, man. Hey, welcome to the Lighthouse series. You know, part of the Aggressive. What's up, Dr. Ham? Man, I saw you walk across the stage. You doing it, man? Welcome back. A new you, same you. What's up,
man? Ain't nothing changed but the date.
I know it, man. So, you know, without further ado, it's been a minute. You know, I've been, retired and making my way around, but back because I've been fiending for a little sweet serenade, really, man. I'm gonna jump straight into it. Sweet serenade. I hate to talk about something that we love to talk about right now, and it's the secular world is talking about Montgomery, and man, we happen to have a Montgomery representative here. Man, that was crazy. That was crazy, and I hate to say that everybody loved it for the right reasons, and I just want to make sure that we're honing in on exactly what happened from a lot of different ways, man. Like hometown, my perspective, Dr. Hamza. So we're just gonna cover it a lot of different ways, and let's get straight into it. So, hey, Cory, what do you think that was, man?
Man, you asked that question, and just music lyrics come out, and I'm sure everyone's been on top of all the memes and social media, but it's a long time coming. So that's the first thing that came to mind. To be honest, man, I'm like you said before, I'm in the Air Force. I'm in Virginia, and I had no idea what had happened until my sister messaged me. And I thought it was just another video. Then I realized that, damn, that area looks familiar. Dang, I've heard of a boat called the Harriet. Ooh, that's way too close to home. Yeah. What's really going on? Right. Is this dude swimming? So yeah, it's been a surprise, and I've been happy to see the responses. I think that was the biggest thing, the responses to everything, because we normally see videos and the responses are divided. I've rarely seen too many divided responses or reactions to what's going on. So I'm very happy to bear the lead. So if you guys, either one of you, want to step up and say anything about what was going on, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page.
Well, okay, so Hal, what you got?
Oh no, man! You know, when I first saw it, you know, my first thought was, you know, because I usually don't share videos of violence, because, you know, I think what tends to happen is, you know, we are already objectified in the media as is, and I noticed that, you know, because we don't teach history in this country, I think a lot of people don't know the significance of you know, Montgomery. I was actually down there a few months ago. I went to that museum down there, the Equal Justice Initiative got that African American museum out there. I went to go visit it, and, you know, the history and the culture. You know, when I found out that, you know, that was that area where that boat came in was the same area where they brought the slave ships in.
Yep.
And so, you know, because we don't tell our history, you know, this dawned on me. I said, it's 2023, and we're still debating in this country, what should we teach to the descendants of enslaved children in this country in our public schools. And just think about that, though. If we're still having that debate on what they want to teach us, what have they learned themselves? Because if they don't want us educated, they ain't trying to get educated. And the sentiment of that violence that we saw them jumping that man, the significance of that violence is an old story in this country. It's not a new phenomenon. Black people being abused and then the system abusing you after the incident. But one of the biggest takeaways is we haven't learned anything in this country.
Oh, I think we learned something now.
I mean, collectively.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I tell people all the time that solidarity should come before unity. Nobody told that young black man to jump in that water and start swimming. But he saw something and he had a call to arms, a call to action. And I think that when I tell people that necessity will create solidarity in the black community, unlike any other force. You know, there was no training, there was no preparatory command. He saw an action. It's like, you know, and I think that to me is powerful because people wasn't just putting out their cell phones trying to record it. I'm like, put them cell phones down and go aid this man.
That was the area for that shit to pop off. I'm talking about to the point where that's where the slave ships pulled up. And please believe, I used to live there too. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I've been on that. I've been drunk on that ball. I was like, oh, I couldn't imagine hopping off that bitch trying to whoop somebody. And Lord knows what he doing. Because I would have been in the service then. And boy. And then having to hold back because you in the service because, man, somebody slapped you. Whoo, don't get me started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just seeing that, like, it had to happen in a capacity that this man was doing his fiduciary duty. And then he got jumped and somebody tried to like redneck kung fu kick his ass and then it all popped off. Right?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, but you had to have this obvious violation of moral foundations, bro. Like authority foundation, like fairness and justice, harming care, like what in the oppression lives in that because of where you live. Like you got to have cultural competence, emotional, like, come on, bro, like move your privileged boat out the way.
Yeah.
Like, and but that is an issue that goes on because them drunk people be fighting they fight a lot about boating issues, you know? When I say they meaning boat owners. Boat owners.
That's a euphemism. That's a euphemism.
Nah, hey, it is what it is. That's a euphemism. Why? Why is that a euphemism?
Oh, well, I mean, now I'm not saying that you don't have as many people with melody in their own boats. We got black boat owners.
I'm about to be one in like 3 to 5 years.
And just stay off of that coast of Gibraltar because them killer whales is biting your rotors off. But
hey man, I got a couple of boats, man. 2 Chainz said it, based on a true story.
Yeah,
I feel you.
That type of boat. You know what I mean? So as long as we keep it real, we got boats because we know that boats would be bringing in all types of stuff that we know we get access to, and how we do that. I mean, it is what it is, man. So listen, at the end of the day, I'm gonna switch it up. My confident opinion for the situation is that, you know, my core values being riot, reverence, intentionality, objectivity, and togetherness would say, I would have to look at that situation and say, you know, I hate that it have to come to that, but you know, stuff like that, either it's supposed to create a punishment type situation where you should not have done that, and it needs to be rehabilitative, but it also needs to be a deterrent. And that has to be a deterrent to say, okay, listen, we all live a crazy ass life out here. By the mere fact that you got a boat and you out there are able to do it or travel or do all that, you got to be conscious. Like you're telling somebody who has to work on that day that you're like drunk and having a great time to like shut up, move. Oh, I don't even know, but you know what it probably sounds like. So not to have the emotional. I think what we're getting at here is like, okay, we need some EQ here. Where's the emotional intelligence? Like, if you're privileged enough to go to these schools, to have all this stuff, like, and I'm not talking, I'm just pointing at privilege. I don't care what you look like. Understanding that privilege comes with the fact that you need to have the emotional intelligence to not be pissing people off who might not have the same privilege. And if it's of a different color, I'm not saying walk on eggshells, but be better. What you got? What you got here?
No, man. And so, you know, I'm always looking at second and third order effects of this, because, you know, anytime in America, when Black people are happy about something, there will be white backlash. And how do I know this? Because I've studied U.S. history. And you know, right now, you know, when the night that Joe Louis won the championship, the heavyweight championship, white people were rioting and assaulting Black people because Joe Louis won that fight. Because Joe Louis destroyed the myth of white supremacy. Yeah. And they had to now come back in and say, wait a minute. And I think that this goes back to that punctuated equilibrium we were talking about before, is that the equilibrium is shifting. Because, you know, there's an expression that people have been saying that has not been beneficial, is they say, I am not my ancestors. That's a dangerous statement, because if you knew what your ancestors did and went through, not only would you be claiming them proudly, you would know, like, they burnt down plantations, they poisoned their slave masters, they ran away, they escaped, they resisted, and the ones that assimilated did it for your survival. So
I love the way you said that, man.
So when we say we ain't our ancestors, then we got to know what Garvey said. A tree without no roots ain't growing nowhere. So when we connect to the strength of the ancestors, because like I told you, they asked Claudette Colvin, she was in Montgomery, she got off the bus, she got ticketed before Rosa Parks did. But they didn't want to make her the face of the movement, because, you know, she was young, she's pregnant. You know, of course, you have to have the pristine Negro to advocate for rights in America, because if you're any flaw, they're going to talk about you and they're going to diminish what you have to say. But they asked her a question when they arrested her. They asked her, why do you just get up? She said at that moment, it was as if Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth were holding her feet down so she couldn't get off that bus. And let me tell you what's historical importance about that is, you were talking about archetypes the other day. The archetype is powerful because anybody can fill that role. Iconography and supremacy are closely related. So like I said, right now, the myth that Black people can't swim, gone. Boom.
Hey, y'all didn't know they had a Cleveland Avenue Y that was teaching swimming in Montgomery. You go down Rosa Parks, there's a YMCA specifically. There's no white people going down there. Now, I'm going to give you Montgomery background. I think this is where I'm gonna be, you know, I'm gonna be the expert here. My background, I come from a legacy, like you said, we cannot say that we are not our ancestors.
You can't.
I come from a legacy of librarians.
My grandmama.
The first, yeah. I grew up in the library, all of them, every single one of those libraries there. Rosa Parks Library, downtown, the Coliseum Library, all of that stuff. The first degree librarian is my grandmother's aunt, the first degree librarian in the state of Alabama.
Oh, wow.
Black or white. My grandmother's aunt. My grandmother, and then her youngest sister also worked in the library system. So we had to learn, we had to read, we had to learn the history. Not only that, we were embedded into the church down there at Dexter Avenue. They knew Martin, they knew Rosa Parks by first name. They like I said, that Rosa, the library down on Rosa Parks is named on behalf of my great, I think another great aunt, the Bertha P. Williams Library down there on Rosa Parks.
Hey man,
landmark.
You on here for a reason, man. Spill it.
Yes.
Spill that. Spill. Give us some of that good stuff about Montgomery that people don't know about, man.
So there's so much culture there. I used to when I was a kid, man, I took it for granted. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to get away from it. It's completely different from what it is now. I'm proud to say that you see the hat right here. This is Montgomery Biscuits. Montgomery Biscuits, the baseball team. I'm rocking Montgomery hard, and I've been rocking it harder for the last week. But this isn't a new hat. I just like to keep them pristine. You know what I'm saying? But there's so much history there in Montgomery that people just overlook. I overlook. Like you were saying, I never really paid attention to the Harriet when I was growing up there. Never really paid attention to the history. Never even connected that the Harriet stood for Harriet Tubman, and it's a boat. That is where the slaves were. When I was, walking around downtown, they have historical placards everywhere. Didn't learn until I was, 16, 17 downtown where the fountain is, that was the auction yard for those slaves, less than a mile away from what happened, and then you have to put all that in perspective. And, they say hindsight is 20/20. You're able to look into the history a lot better and understand exactly what's happened. Now, on the on the lighter side, another legacy of Montgomery is fighting.
Get to it, man. I just saw a video about that shit.
Man, I'm sure everybody's heard about where you're not supposed to be in Montgomery. It's damn near the whole city. You just got to be careful. And I didn't fight. I'll tell you right now, I'm 6'2", 250 plus. I'm not gonna give you the full details of the body composition.
You're not a small dude,
but I'm not small. But I was small when I was in school, and I wasn't an intimidating kid. But from 4th grade to 7th grade, I was in one fight at least one fight every year. I never started it. I don't think I finished any, most of them, but I had to defend myself. You know what I'm saying?
Man, so Montgomery, man, I think when I think about Montgomery, man, I always thought Montgomery was a capital city. It was a capital city, right? And so I'm like, me being from Georgia, I was like, oh, well, I guess like it's like another Atlanta, like whatever, right? And so, I didn't find out until I like cross-trained in the military in 2009. I go to Montgomery. I'm like, oh, okay, it should be lit. No,
it was.
It is. So but me being who I am, I know how to find certain places and parts where it might be popping, right? And when I just saw it, I was like, yeah. I have no business anywhere in this city, right? But I read one of the first things I immediately started recognizing, especially when I moved there, was how big this place was, man. Like the landmass, like I couldn't get out of Montgomery.
No, not at all.
I couldn't get out, and
it's not a small town.
It's not a small.
It's not a small town. I know y'all want to say this song, try that in a small town. Montgomery is not a small town.
is not, even though it tries to have small town vibes.
But
right?
it's going away.
Man,
You can't avoid it.
Listen, let me tell you something. When I was living there, I had a conversation with a gentleman, older black gentleman, and we just had a meeting of the minds. And there was the thrift shop on base, right? Because sometimes at them thrift shops you can find some good stuff on base. So I just happened to swing by there one time, and I was hollering at this guy. He was like, "Man, he's like, it seems like since they got their seat on the bus here, that was it to Montgomery."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was like, and me being from Georgia, right? Like, I had a different life. Like, I came up with white people and stuff, but it wasn't like one of those bow down type things. It was like it was a mutual respect, where it was like, get out the way, right? But at the same time, when I was in Montgomery, it was like it looked like it was still kind of like that slow mentality, like, oh yes sir type stuff. And I'm not saying it was, but it just felt of the oppression. I mean, when you feel the energy of your ancestors in some of these places, that's why I don't like going to Charleston, man. Like,
yeah,
man, it's just like, so like, what's the difference now? Do things change in Montgomery? Do things change in our world now based on this? Like, is there going to be maybe some, hey, let's maybe watch how we doing things now? What you think, Al?
Well, so we're talking about the lynching triangle: Mississippi, number one, Louisiana, and Alabama. That is the lynching triangle. And then when we start to talk about the difference, is that it's social learning. Social learning is what we are in the process of now, because we were socially engineered to be docile to white aggression. When the white woman walks down the road, I get off to the side. When the white person addresses me, I make sure I address them as Mr. I make sure that I have to follow these customs. I have to be woke in the South, because once I get out those big cities and I drive 20 minutes away, I'm going to be in Podunk somewhere.
Yeah.
And them sundown town areas. The only real difference is that we have rejected the idea that being nonviolent against people who don't have a conscience is not productive, helpful, or useful. If someone doesn't have a conscience, you can't reason with them. Oh. And what we are dealing with in this country cannot be reasoned with. And I think when you start to look at what's going to happen as a result of this and many other incidents, we got to remember our history. We had the Deacons of Defense, who were organizations that were created for security in Black neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It just so happens in our lifetime, outside of Liberty City in Miami in the 80s, where there was a large uprising of racial violence, of Black people pretty much beating up white people due to some issues that were going on there, they said that it was the most significant Black people attacking white people since the Nat Turner Rebellion in the 1830s. Mm-hmm. Because there is no history in this country of Black people randomly, systematically terrorizing white people or harming white people. We don't have a history of that. And the people who have the history of doing those things have convinced everybody that we are the threat. If that ain't the worst gaslighting in the world, is the people who did, and this is why I tell people, there is no difference, because you have to remember the same thing that these people did to get this land, they will do to keep this land. And see, the reason that I know that for certainty is because they haven't learned anything different. Nobody has taught them. That's what January 6th was about. It's about, we don't get our way, we will storm your building and take over your government. And next time we're going to come for real. That was just the dress rehearsal. And what we are seeing happening is a convergence of two phenomenon that most people have not experienced in our lifetime. It's economic hardship mixed with fear of being replaced. When you add those together, and I'm losing my white country, you're going to see violence that has no parallel in our lifetime or our parents' lifetime. And because we think we live in the myth of a post-racial society, that's a myth that we were told, but we don't. And all that's happening is the stuff that has been festering, because as long as Black people in America did not ask for anything, we were okay. But when you say you want to stand up to my authority, then I have to now show you my power. And that, I believe, is coming. And there hasn't been any learning. Like, if the federal government came out tomorrow and made a statement to Black people and said, listen, Black people, we have systemically created systems to deprive you. And the reason we don't want to talk about it is because we're still using those systems right now. And when you start to find out that they know that they see the writing on the wall, they see the writing on the wall. And as we respond to their violence, because the people with power always attack first, because power brings paranoia. If you think people will come for your power, you will attack them first. And that is the impetus for us to get solidarity, because we understand that's why the South started the war. They started the war because at that time they had the position that they thought was more powerful, and they thought somebody was coming to take their stuff from them, even though Lincoln wasn't coming to take their slaves from them. But they fear, because their fear makes them paranoid, and their paranoia leads to delusional thinking. And the quote I'll leave you guys with is this: if one person is delusional, they are called insane. If millions of people are delusional, they are called a political party.
I thought you were going to say a cult.
Well, cult, religion, whatever you want, whatever. Because when you are looking at America, the difference is this: we are psychologically trained and conditioned to not understand each other.
Right.
We are psychologically conditioned because you believe we live in a colorblind society. You believe we live in a meritocracy, but we do not. We live in an oligarchy, and what is coming to pass now is not only us being frustrated, but the idea is every battle needs a flag and a rallying cry, needs a motto, and needs a slogan, needs an impetus. And that man taking his hat and throwing it up in the air. So now we know that's code. Hey, that's code. If you see a hat in the air, beware. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So is that a new cloud? Is that a new cry, Corey? Is that?
I think it is. What's crazy is I don't do conspiracy theories, but I have unproven theories. This is just my opinion, but it's going to be based on a theory. That wasn't a battle cry. It wasn't.
No.
That was a sign that this dude was like, excuse my language, fuck this job.
I'm out of here. It's the new battle cry.
Yeah. It wasn't for everybody. It was
like, now
I'm done. I'm taking this off. I'm ready to go.
I'm taking my stripes off.
Yeah, this is it. You're not working with
on the table.
Yeah, this is done. I don't care about this job anymore. I'm tired of it. And from the reports that I've seen, that they've had problems with this specific family and this specific vote for years. And this dude has probably been working there for years. You don't just become co-captain out of nowhere. He's been working that boat for years. He knows the history.
That was a captain that got hit?
He was the co-captain. He wasn't security guard.
That was a co-captain.
He was the co-captain. Man, I lost my hat.
The plot thickens.
Yeah.
This dude was the captain of the vessel trying to get it. Now, from a military standpoint, I'm going to tell you like this. We call that, like, you have the AC, the aircraft commander, right? You know what I mean? And that person outranks everybody. It doesn't matter if there's other people on the vessel that outrank him, right?
And what's lovely about this is that was the strength of a community. it may be a microcosm, but old boy was working there. That's a summer job. The swimmer, Aquaman.
Aquaman.
Hey, Aaron Aquaman.
See murder.
Yeah. All the names he's getting. He was there for a summer job. Let's face it, he's a 16-year-old.
Bro.
He's getting ready for his junior, sophomore year of school, probably playing football, looking forward to, possibly being a starter.
Listen.
But 2-3 days out of the week, he's there in Montgomery, working that boat, getting to know people. And once one person goes down, we're gonna squad up. We become family quick.
Woo.
We become family.
And they were both staff, right? They were both staff on that boat. So he saw getting jumped. He was like, "Oh hell no,
exactly.
bro.
Not today."
Nah, fam, you're not doing that.
Bro, listen, man. I felt like, we have that mentality where like we can beat up on our own, but like you can't come beat up on my brother. Like, What are you doing? So I think that was one of the situations where like some of the keen, like just innate want to whoop somebody's ass just came out of everybody, right? And unfortunately, the enemy was of a different color. Because I done been in plenty melees where people the same color. You might have a couple of Hispanic and white friends and all that type of stuff, but like for real, when everybody black, you better know who you with.
Yeah.
You know what they look like. In that situation, everybody was white.
And from what I've heard they spent 45 minutes on the water waiting for this boat to move, arguing from the boat.
Wow.
Arguing from the boat. And throwing out, racial slurs and I'm not doing this and cursing people out. They already knew it was happening. You got the band playing "Move, Bitch, Get Out the Way."
That's that
battle cry.
That lack of melanin privilege.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely some privilege.
But because we understand that one of the things that we're up against is this idea that, if you hit me, I'm just gonna turn the other cheek.
No, we all have a line.
But this, I mean, the conditioning.
Yeah.
So what they would do historically is that if they came after you, they would usually threaten your family too.
Oh yeah.
And you got to get out of here because they understood that rebel nature is usually familial because somebody taught you in your family that I can stand up for myself. I have the right to defend myself. I don't have to shuck, jive, assimilate, code switch, anything. I can stand here and be in my space and stand my ground like you love to do. But you thinking that you just gonna jump this black man and you not gonna get met with some energy, that thinking is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Because
see, there's no way you thinking and that's why I'm glad it happened in Montgomery, because I think if it would happen up north, it wouldn't have got as much attention.
Yeah.
Because if it happened up north, the northerners and from a cultural divide, we tend to have a situation where we don't even have the they had the luxury in the South of understanding the black man in a way that they never had to understand him up north. And I think that when you start to look at how things, the trickle or the ripple effect is that we need, like I said, to your point, a rallying cry, but more importantly, it's something that Malcolm said in the 60s during an interview. And they asked Malcolm, when will black people, essentially, if they're getting jumped or beat up, will other black people come into their aid? And he talked about the necessity creating it where there's going to come a time where it's like, I stand all I can stand, I can't stand no more. Yeah. And my cup now overfloweth. And so that's where I think that when you start to look at a lot of these southern states, primarily Alabama, Mississippi, when you look at the discrepancies with the electoral map, with the districting, with the drawing of the map, the gerrymandering, and you know the definition that I use, because I've been trying to build a framework, you know, and I think that it starts off with the definition, and this is the definition of power that I use now. Power is the ability to define and to have other people define your reality and to have other people respond to your definition as if it were their own. Power is the ability to define reality and to have other people respond to your definition as if it were their own. That is psyops. That is mental warfare. Because if you are arguing with definitions that I created, then you will be defeated in the power struggle every time. Because I never created in my language to explain what I'm doing to you. I didn't create language to explain what I'm doing to you. And it takes the oppressee to tell the oppressor why and what these problems are, so that not only can you address them, so you can be readdressed. And Frederick Douglass said it the best. He said, man's rights consist in 3 boxes. You got the ballot box is the first box. Go vote, do your thing. You know, pick your leaders. The second box is the jury box. Rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And he said when the ballot box fails and the jury box fails, you got to go to the cartridge box. And hey, because what we have failed to realize is that what we have lacked in order to defend ourselves is, and the reason we have not done it is because we were raised by our enemy. Our enemy raised us, and he raised us so that we would not see them as enemies. They raised us they defined our reality for us. And that's what power is. I can define your reality. You can't read, you can't write, you can't do nothing unless I say it. A black man and a white man can't even play chess together. That's against the law, because if you fraternize, it's the same thing with the military. The same reason that officers and enlisted people don't stay together is because familiarity breeds contempt. The closer I am to you, the more disrespectful I will be to you. Exactly. And they never had to deal with it because they've always been able to move away from us anytime that we started to progress.
And Cory, I was going to just say, man, this is why they say you should never meet your idols and stuff too, though. The same principle applies, man, because what you're going to end up seeing is just not what you want to see. Cory, what you got?
Man, I was just going to say, here's the thing that makes this situation in Montgomery so ideal. This was the powder keg. First of all, the issues that we've been having over the last, I'll even go back 10 years, was being abused by authority. We've been abused by authority, police officers. This time, we can't say that. We had the role of authority. Now, what you just said was you can move out as far as you can. You can't do that much more in Montgomery. You cannot. It started with the malls, and everybody starts moving out east. And I just saw a comment. Somebody said that Montgomery is 60% black. Thank you for that note. Montgomery is 60% black. There are roughly about 200,000 citizens in the city of Montgomery. In the city alone, 60%, we're going at what, 12,000 or 120,000? I looked at the stat. There's a 30% are white. So half of what you got 120,000, and then you have 60,000 white citizens. Now, stats don't really mean anything unless you put some meaning to it.
I can tell you for a fact that I recently retired, wavy, getting my frames right done for my appreciate you. Waiting on you on the other side, Cory. So I'm getting my frames done. If you know me, I'm bougie as shit with my frames.
Very
And so
much
I was thinking about my first frames that I got, you know, I received with my CCAFs, and I went over there off Vine Street or something over there, whatever that street is, that where they got that nice little restaurant, but it literally, God, it's off maybe third exit 3 or something. I don't know, man.
You talking about downtown?
It's somewhere over there, man, but it's literally like it's this little spot where it literally turns from the hood to like this affluent area, right? And it's just like this immediate change, like right there on a corner.
Oh, you
right?
talking about like Carter Hill Road area, over by the school? By
Yeah,
ASU.
man. But there, what's that? There's a restaurant over there, like back in the back tuck. It's called like Vine or something. You go in there and get it's a buffet, but you can go get wine and stuff back in the back. Anywho, man, you know, of course, me being at the JAG school, I was with a lot of white folks. So I found out about white folk shit in Montgomery that probably some black folks didn't even know about. But, you know, because I know about East Chase and all that stuff, but I lived in Prattville when I was there. And so, I mean, it is what it is, man. Like Montgomery, it was just, Birmingham should have been the capital once the Civil War was over. Jeez, you know, but I feel like NASA, and this is a conspiracy theory like crazy, but I don't know what's going on at NASA, but Birmingham gets hit with so many tornadoes,
and earth,
like it is the new tornado alley. Yeah. And I was looking at something with that weather project they had, and I was trying to do it. So don't let my conspiracy theory catch you up. It's something about Alabama, right, that has this negative history, of course, but it's all like we talk about Florida, you talk about Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, like all these southern states that have this history of treatment to black people. And it's like this, it's almost getting to this point where it's like, shut up and take it. Like down in Florida, man, they make it's so almost like the Wild Wild West. Texas is the same way, right? Like, it's like certain laws, we don't care, like shoot them up and hey, we're going to do it here. This is how we do it, and like it or love it. And there's some people who do not care. Who don't care, right? Like they're talking about not teaching history properly because it has not been taught properly. They're talking about the retardation of history even more, right? So how do you can't even trust? So politicians, right, all the way down to the normal citizen who could, like you said, use their box to vote like-minded people into office, just shows you, right? Like it's 2023, and it's so crazy that I can hear this from a white person and then experience something completely different from another white person. And I'm like, y'all two white mother should talk, but they don't, because like we talk about, there's a certain white solidarity that happens in certain issues. And I hate to get a little bit long-winded in this particular one, but it's getting to the point where like the only white people I truly see besides, you know, people I know and all this is like people from the LGBTQ community, things of that nature. And I don't want it to seem like they're jumping on the backs of, but that has forever been a thing, but it needs to. Like oppression sees oppression. It's just like, yeah, take them all down, whatever, right? That's why anybody who felt some sort of way about seeing them privileged people do what they did felt great about seeing them get their ass whooped, right? Like that's human race. That's black people in Montgomery. Like even if you just read about the history of Montgomery and the treatment of black people and understand what happened there, like as a black privileged person that lives in Montana would be like, oh yeah, get them, right? Like what the, you know, like, but sometimes it just comes down to where I made a statement to somebody and they were like, why can't we all just get along? And I get why they said that, but it made me think that not everybody sees it the same way at the same time, right? Rodney King said the same thing, but then it made me think about the archetype and the stereotype. And then Dr. Ham said something to me about, we were talking about Christ's conscience versus Christ's archetype.
The hero with 1,000 faces, the mono myth. Because stories, this is what Derek Bell said with critical race theory. He says that we've never told our story here, partly because we didn't know it, and then partly because no one wanted to hear it. But the reason that this is important is because I was in Montgomery and I was driving by and I saw a school named Robert E. Lee High School. as I see, I'm like, Robert, I felt like I was in a time portal.
Man,
I'm like, why do we have schools named after the man who led the army, who killed more Americans than any other person in U.S. history, foreign or domestic? This dude led an army that killed 300,000 Americans, and we got a school named after him. Not only haven't they not learned anything, they're doubling down. And while we are trying to figure out the symbolism, I don't care. Listen, nobody who benefits from your ignorance has any incentive to educate you. I don't care what the school is called. If I benefit from your ignorance, I will not educate you. And so the Carter G. Woodson said that the Negro has been miseducated. I would only submit to you that eventually history and the current day have to intersect. Eventually, they ain't history no more. The problem with America is that if you put me in your space, and we are both delusional. I'm delusional because I don't live in the America that you know.
Right.
You're delusional because you don't live in the America that I know. Right. How will we reconcile our delusions? How will we reconcile? And I'd submit to you, we reconcile them the only way they know how to reconcile: violence. Right.
That you bring up Robert E. Lee, and I know that was a topic that has been I want to say tabled, but I feel like it's been shared upon on the situation. But they've been talking about changing that since everybody else has been looking at the names and the symbolism. Now, that was one thing that as an adult, and I talk about how crazy Montgomery was when I was growing up, there were only 4 public schools there, large public schools. But it was blatantly in our face that, like you said, Kalvin, it seemed like we got past the bus boycott, and then we just sat down because we got what we aimed for, and we just took a break. We took a breather. I'm not going to say we quit. We just took a breather. Now, there were some other things that came on, I guess to lend some other symbolism that there was progress. Let's say like the majority to minority program for the education system. If you were a minority, and if you were a majority in the school that you were zoned for, you can go to any school in Montgomery City County, where you would be the minority, to try to increase the diversity of it. And I think the theory of the program is a really good idea.
Man, I agree. I'm pretty sure there are plenty efforts that have gone down in that. My youngest sister is an Alabama State, University alumni, 2011.
Yeah.
Right. And her friends, right? So like I have ties to that place in a lot of different ways. But Alabama, just like you said, that triangle has shown over and over that they never cared. Right.
And that's what I wanted to point on, is like going back to the schools. Those 4 schools, you know what the names of it. You already said one. Robert E. Lee, the Generals.
Stonewall Jackson?
No.
They love him. They love some Stonewall, boy. Ooh.
Jefferson Davis.
Oh my, the traitor in chief?
Jefferson Davis, the Volunteers. Sidney Lanier, the poet laureate. All of these have connections to the Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last school, which is the furthest west, was George Washington Carver.
Okay.
So they lent you know, let's keep the castle where the where Lanier is. I'm not sure what the status of these schools are now. Let's face it, I'm 20 years out of high school, so I'm not really paying attention to what's going on there anymore. I don't have any kids that's going to school there, and that may be a fault of mine, but it was very blatant. And I mean, once again, it's our legacy, not our it's our legacy, it's our tradition to have these. And I'm sure that was the argument, but I find it very ironic that we had all these, you know, black athletes that went through these schools and made names for it. And I can go it off. The last one, Henry Ruggs, bless his heart, is going to jail, going to prison now. Went
the Raiders,
to
football player.
Yeah.
There's
a bunch of them. There's a hot pot of athleticism in athletes, stars. Robert Rah Johnson went to JD. Monrico Crittenden, he was he just passed, but he went to St. Jude. That's a private school, black private school on the west side. It was the last spot or the destination for the Selma to Montgomery March. Who else has been through there? George Teague, a bunch of athletes. But we always had that pride, and you really don't want to take pride away from your school, because that's a part of your experience. Right. I didn't go to a public school in high school. I went to the Montgomery Academy, and I still have pride for that.
Right.
It's fear the bridge.
Man, I just posted something about my school today. I interrupted Cory, and that pride is big because like we won a championship, and there's a lot of different things that go into where you come from, man. Like, yeah. And so knowing that you come from Montgomery and it has that type of oppression tied to it, because my city, Columbus, has oppression tied to it, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. Yeah.
It's not the same. And even though it's that close, it's not the same, because the way that Alabama operates and Georgia are completely different.
And we carry that confliction in our head, whether we are knowing it or not. Anytime I meet somebody that's from Montgomery, especially in the military, that's the first thing we try to do is connect. Where you from? Oh, you from Montgomery? What's the next question? What school did you go to?
Yep.
Right.
Robert E. Lee. Let's throw up the L. Damn.
Wow. Yeah. That's unfortunate, man. Well, it all comes down to this, man. Like, all that stuff comes down to, if we're having this conversation, which we always can, but an event brought it up, man. And I just think, at the end of the day, things like this happen, and we need to be a guide or a warning. And so I would say the warning
for all parties.
What's that?
We need to be a warning for all parties.
Right. But
this isn't the beginning. All right, this isn't the end for sure.
It isn't the end, but like Dr. Ham said, man, he was alluding to, we still got to be careful, man, because this is a win. This is a win for everybody, but it looks specifically like a win for Black people, because Black people need this win. We needed a solidarity moment so undeniable. Yeah. Right? Undeniable. Yeah. The substantiation is right there, right? And so we needed it, but it's not to be missed that this event in this area should be a spark, that there needs to be a spotlight on all these states that have been oppressive and came from like this whole civil rights movement.
Yeah. And we are some of the most gaslit people in human history. Just in Alabama, there was a Black man who won the mayor of in a small town, and they won't even let the white supremacists won't even let the dude who duly elected take office. It's been years. And see, what I've learned is this: we haven't, and I keep making this point, we haven't learned anything. All we've learned is that if I don't know what I'm dealing with, I can't fix the problem. We are dealing with intergenerational trauma. and what is intergenerational trauma? It's different manifestations of the same phenomenon. Mm-hmm. It's how this looks in this context. Because when you tell me, if I go to Louisiana and I'm going to these places, I know I got to stay on code. I know I got to stay on code. Yeah. I don't have my green motorist travel book with me, the green book, but I know that I got to make sure that I stay on the main roads. I know I got to make sure that I am doing what I can because, you know, Black people are the only people in this country who have to research how racist a place is before we visit. We got to go look up like how racist the place is first.
I'm about to move to this city. What area can I not go to?
And so when we can enter into spaces that we have not historically or traditionally been in, what we are coming up against is he is the exceptional Negro. That's why he can move into the suburbs. He ain't like the rest of them Black folk. He is special.
But that's what we were raised to do.
Yeah.
That's what we were raised to do, is
to do what?
Be exceptional.
Okay, so speaking of that, how do we be exceptional besides the Black entertainer, man? Like,
no, we're not so this is the problem. The problem is when we go to the definition of power, it is the ability to define your reality. I submit to you that the reality that Black people have in America is not our reality. It was the reality that was given to us. Is you give me a pig intestines and I'm going to make a delicacy. You give me a foot of a pig and I'm going to make a delicacy. I'm going to season my food because you gave me the trash and I got to get some flavor in this. So what we have done is we've taken everything this country's given us and they are amazed that they haven't destroyed us. They're like, we got the Indians. Why can't we destroy these people? It's because they don't understand that there's something in us that does not stop. Because when we see solidarity, what we find out is this. There are Black people in this country who want to assimilate into white society. And I say, I salute you. Go ahead, assimilate, make us look good. You got Black people who want to go back to Africa. I support that. Go back to Africa. You got Black people who want to live in their own reservation in America. I support that. Because until we get out of the monolithic thinking that we all have to be doing the same thing, it's wrong. It's like Booker T. Washington said, we are 5 fingers. The only time we got to form a fist is when they come to us. You about your business, I'm about my business. But they come and attack you, then I put that post on there. We're going to invoke Article 5 of the Negro Treaty. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us.
Wow.
Now, there is no Negro Treaty. I made that up.
No. We can make what? Hey,
because what I'm learning to do is I have to first define my reality so that I can have power over me.
But that comes with education too.
Yeah.
It comes with a lot of, and it's not just what's given to you. You have to seek it.
Oh, yeah.
You have to seek it. It's not going to be given to you.
Yeah.
So, and if it's not going to be given to you, you have to take it.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, we got 2 minutes before the hour. So let's wrap it because we will go. We'll go. Right. So
yeah.
Cory, what you got? What's your money tip? What's your book tip?
Money tip. I'm gonna go back to that last statement. I'm not saying that we need to take it by force. We need to take what's ours in a smart way. Now, if we need to go with violence, then defend yourself, handle your business. But taking that knowledge, it's always in the books. Like I said, my background is in a legacy of libraries. So I have to have a book, and I love seeing the background. I'm glad that's not a green screen, Dr. Ham. But I love sports. You see, football is my second favorite F word. It's my shirt. But right now I'm reading Gridiron Genius, and it's a masterclass of building teams and winning at a highest level. Now, it applies a lot to sports and everything, but I've been reading it and applying it to just general leadership properties. Everything, knowledge is transferable. You just need to know how to, adjust it and apply it to your current situation. Yeah. So that's the book I'm reading. money tip, I know we talked about it earlier, is invest in what you know. Target stock is, $130 per share right now. How many times you walk out of Target with a bill less than that?
Right. All right. What you got, Doc?
So look at what you got.
This book is called White Rage: The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide. Robin DiAngelo had a book called White Fragility.
Oh,
I like the term white rage because when we say fragility, it makes it seem like they don't know better. They do know better. They do know better. It's rage. And what invokes Black people don't invoke white rage. What invokes white rage is Black people who want to change their position, who want to challenge the status quo, who do not want to accept the reality that you are giving me. That is what invokes white rage. Because if you a good old Negro and you just stay on your plantation and don't hurt nobody, they ain't nobody worried about you. But as soon as you cross those railroad tracks and start saying, why can't I do what so-and-so can do, you are going to meet. And it takes many forms in legislation. It takes many forms: economics, education, entertainment, law, labor, politics, religion, sex, war, and Dr. Francis Questwell added health to that. Those are the structures that we're dealing with. And when you attack one of them, the others come to its defense. To your point about education, right now we attack the education pillar. The law pillar is coming to its defense. You can't teach that. And so the system is insulated to protect itself from your critique. And that's why my belief is that when we start to talk about this system, my money tip will go into this. It's investing in yourself. Investing in yourself. Black people in America have the highest ratio of entertainment to education budget. For every $1 we spend on educating ourselves, we spend $200 on entertainment per dollar. And we have to flip that ratio because the circus is what the emperor gives you to distract you. And when we start to invest in ourselves, our education, our furtherment, our betterment, our development, we're going to be better because now not only will I come to help you, I'm going to come with the tools that are appropriate.
Man, that's a good tip, man. All right. So investing in yourself. I pulled up mine real quick. So my book tip real quick, Made to Stick by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. Man, they got this acronym called SUCCESS about how to make ideas sticky, and it needs to be simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and a story. And as long as you have the core like principles or ideas of what you're talking about and you use that acronym, like you can make ideas stick. So that's why it's made to stick, why some ideas survive and others die. They got another couple of good books that I enjoy when it comes to talking about decision making. And my money tip, I recently got into that Nouveau Nordisk. My dad actually brought it up, which is crazy. But man, I jumped into that last week, and I'm up almost 500. So just pay attention to what people are doing, because that particular pharmaceutical company is selling that diabetes drug, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of people are taking that insulin or whatever, even if they don't have diabetes.
Just to lose weight now.
Just to lose weight. So yeah, I tuned into that, man, and I made a couple of bucks, and it sounds good to me. So with that, man, we're gonna wrap it up. What I want to say is make sure, I'm wearing a couple of things. So I got my Vibe High Club stuff here. I got to stop generational trauma. So as you were saying that, I was trying to throw it up because it's the real thing. Like, we out here trying to live, but we all should be out here trying to stop generational trauma. Just like that young boy, he has heard so many stories of his ancestors getting their ass whooped. He saw George Floyd. He saw everything. He said, this shit ain't about to happen today.
Nothing's stopping me.
High standard, man. Like, we got to stop all trauma, man. And so I would say, show your reverence, oabykj.com. And my final thoughts real quick. you know, as we talk about this Montgomery stand-up, man, you know, it's funny. I've watched it a lot of times. I can't lie, right? But because there was just so many views, angles that you just had to see too, right? Like, I'm a legal professional, man. Like, I'm so used to going back on videos and say, oh, yeah, whoa. He did crash down on her.
You put your legal hat on.
Every time, man, because if somebody want to have a conversation with me about it, I got to be ready in a lot of different perspectives, man. Yeah. And so as funny as it is, it's unfortunate that this type of barbaric shit has to happen when people forget that it's a different time. And like, we do need to come together and smack that ass. And everybody needs to jump on the train of just doing what's right.
Can I say something to that thought?
Yeah, man.
It's not a different time. It's a different Negro.
Ooh.
At the same time, it's a different Negro. Hey, because let me tell you, when
you ain't lying.
Because I will tell you this. We did not all leave the plantation on the same day.
Right.
There is this myth in America that we all, like, you had people living on plantations where their great grandparents enslaved at in the 1970s. They were still living on the same plantation where they sharecropped at and were enslaved at. Mm-hmm. And when I say leave the plantation, I'm talking about the thinking, the plantation mentality. Right. Because if I don't understand the plantation mentality, then I'm going to misunderstand that the generational trauma did not just affect Black people. White people were traumatized too.
The whole time.
It made a God complex for them. Mm-hmm. That's what that Karen is. All that Karen is that's the white lady on the plantation. Karen during the antebellum South was called Miss Ann. Oh, same. We had a name back then. We called her Miss Ann. Was the Karen back then? It was our way of calling them what they were. So we've always done this. And so it's not a different time. It's a different Negro who is being educated not by his oppressor, because my oppressor can't educate me. My only thing my oppressor can do is lead me in the wrong direction.
I would merely say, for the mere fact that we can't control time, that I would have to disagree with you.
Share.
Well, the reason I say that is because your statement is not wrong, man. Like, we're here to build on each other's statement, and with you being, as you know, knee deep in time, and me understanding time as the dimensional, like, we can't control it, but knowing that in a different time, right? Like, we wouldn't even, I am a different Negro than my father, right?
I was gonna
right. I was recently looking at a podcast one time, and I was looking a certain way. I was like, damn, I look like my dad in that podcast. But like the resources and resiliency that we possess, like the shoulders that we stand on, right? Yes. Like the music that we listen to, right? Like, there's so much that makes us, and especially like us in this triangle right here on this podcast, right? With the military service and the Air Force specifically, like, we're a unique percentile because we come with, you know, coming from that city, right? You know, you coming out of Cleveland, right? Montgomery, you know, I got Columbus, Georgia, you know, and I spent some time in Atlanta, Georgia, right? And to have my family there, you know what I mean? And I can never claim Atlanta, right? But that's a lot of, and just that alone, then me going to the military, traveling and building the resume, like, there's so much, man, I struggle with living nowadays because I know how much I've done. And then I say, I want to do more. Then I'll be like, what the hell, man? Like, what are you trying? Your only competition is yourself, right? Because I recognize, if I look back, who the hell else is, if I were to do the numbers, statistics don't lie, but the story tells it all. I have so many unique situations on my own that make me my own type of 1%er. Right? Like my own type, like from single dad to being in a doctorate program, right? But I got a doctor on, you know what I mean? Like, so here we go right here. So I made sure that I was in another room, you know what I mean? But it's like all these delicate things that we got to balance, right? Because I swear we struggle, and white people too, and everybody, ethical exhaustion, man, because like knowing that code switching is easier to do sometimes, but then in the long run, the mental health of a person who has code switched so long can actually produce like the worst type of monster, believe it or not, right? Especially if you understand the power of power. God, you take the power of power. Now, I'm sorry that I used it twice, but if you know how to manipulate and manifest at the same time, you're dealing with a higher level of consciousness, right?
Yes.
And so when you live in a world where you're a Black person and you've been told that you have a soul and that you literally thrive on the souls of your ancestors, and you've been taught that through some sort of religious or spiritual discipline that you need to depend on some sort of spirit to keep going, right? You start talking to these spirits, you start reaching for these things that you know exist, because damn it, if you start paying attention, it start making sense. But you still understand that you have to manipulate if you're going to get somewhere, which comes into play external power and authentic power, right? Which are the two main books that at the end of the day, Black, white, or whatever, the soul, if I cut anybody, they're going to bleed, right? So which tells me, and I've done my share of anatomical visits, it's all pink. And so at the end of the day, I'm talking about like in science, man. I'm in the psychology class. Get your head out together.
Hey, I can't help that, bro.
And you know damn well I leave plausible deniability for anything. But
and we all have a past.
Well, I'm saying the past, the future, but it's about the present. The psychological flexibility. Man, I'm gonna pause on that. Go ahead, Corey. What you got?
I'm gonna finish with one of the. I'm gonna circle back to what we actually started to discuss is the statement, "I am not my ancestor."
Okay.
No, you can't say it. We all agree you can't just say that and let that be the end statement. I am built by my ancestors. I am the second edition or volume 2. I'm the sequel. I'm here to do more. I'm here to push that envelope a lot further. Records are meant to be broken. So we are to further advance the narrative, the drive, the mission, whatever you want to call it, to make it better for the next. Because I'm not my ancestor, but I'm also not my descendants, and I have a reason to do what I have to do. So that's a lot deeper than what I wanted to, and I don't know where I pull this shit from sometimes.
Pull it out. You got it from your ancestors.
It's one of them books I got in the library.
And
but, listen, it's what we have to do.
Go ahead, Corey. Keep going, because on this special occasion, we got to our final thought, and the final thought is we're still here in it, and we're gonna continue to go because this is one of those special events where we haven't been on in a while, so going longer doesn't bother me. But I can tell you, thinking about all this, man, it makes me get back to like I was talking about, psychological flexibility, right? Because I come from a world where I have to not be a prima donna because of my experience in a lot of different ways. And I got to make sure that I teach my daughter not to be one, as I'm trying to make sure that she doesn't suffer the same psychological warfare tactics that I did, right? But like how do you do that, right? Like you have to understand what your ancestors went through, right? Because if you don't learn history, you're bound to repeat it in a lot of different ways, right? And so what I found is that every 20 years, right, you have to do a check of who you are and where you came from, and make sure that you have to do a validity check, right? And what it's called a law of hereditary for me, man. And it's like there's a compound interest in life. Now I'm a nerd out for a second, but I'm gonna bring it back. Like when my daughter's 20 years old, and there's just certain things she's now recognizing that like I'm not a superhero like she thought, right? Like certain things about, you know, family, like this is messy, that's messy, but she still has to live inside that, right? Because once we all learn that, you know, so and so grandma was this, it was like, oh shit, grandma was drinking vodka while she was driving. Damn, I thought that was water in that clear until you tasted it, right? It's like all these things you have to learn socially, you have to become accustomed to. And like as we switch topics to like the mental model of a person who is not black, like if you're white and all you see is white stuff, and then you happen to deal with people who talk crazy about other people outside the race, you can't help but become desensitized to dealing with them. And then in a drunken state, your rawest emotions come out and you just don't give a shit. Now, I'm not saying that the actions of people, you know, sometimes can be misrepresented, right? But, you know, there was something I saw about that same family with on the Breakfast Club, and them going into the hospital, and I think you said the same thing, Cory, maybe. And the whole staff was black, and they end up saying, shit, F these N-words, and was like, and the police was like, if you don't, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't want to get treated, you can beat it. And they beat it because they didn't want to deal with any more black people.
Historically, the enslaved person could not read or write. And because they couldn't do these functions, I think when people say we are not our ancestors, there's two sides to a coin.
Yeah.
Because education makes people unfit to be slaves. Education by its nature is rebellion. Because if I educate you, you can rebel. If I educate,
challenge.
No, because this is when I say rebellion is only free people rebel.
Yeah.
See, in order to be free, I have to have the right to rebel, come what may, come what consequences may. If I don't have the right to rebel against tyranny, against oppression, then I'm still a slave. And I think when it comes to what we're seeing about our ancestors, it's the question that I ask people, because I start from the foundation of our lineage here. And I'd say, who taught black people how to raise free children? Who taught your parents how to raise a free child? And better, who taught your grandparents? Who taught them? Who taught you how to raise a free child? And I'd submit to you that we are on the job training. And more importantly, because when I read the slave narratives, when I read the historical accounts of the books, the Peculiar Institution, what I found is one glaring similarity is that each plantation they took best practices, right? Like they would talk to them, they have meetings like, hey, I'm having some problems on my plantation. What should we do? And when it came to the ancestors, what I'm learning is the things that they did here to keep us from our knowledge. That's why I would take a family, sell them to the Mississippi Delta downriver, keep the wife up north. And if I could fragment the family section, then the only person who's going to tell you about your ancestors are the people who enslaved them. And if you look in history, antiquity to present day, we have no recollections or recorded data of people who were enslaved. We are the first generations of people who come from descendants of enslaved who can read, write, and articulate our condition. Because the goal of the slave master was never for you to report your condition, Because if you could report on your condition, then it makes them a monster. That monster you're talking about, that moral monster. Because when we call it out and we say, I see the same thing happen today. When Michelle Alexander wrote The New Jim Crow, and you see that the prison confinement are at the same levels of the 1850 levels, then what you will see is it's slavery by a new name. It was redesigned. It got a rebrand. And what we're seeing now is unless we deconstruct, and this is hard to do when you're dealing with the trauma, especially when you don't know your ancestors. You don't know them. I mean, specifically, I don't know. My grandfather was enslaved in Alabama, or his family was in Alabama. My grandmother on my mother's side was enslaved in Nashville, Tennessee. I just found that out a couple years ago. Y'all found that out.
Y'all cousins.
We probably cousins.
Possibly.
And so because we are connecting the dots, ancestry, family tree, link tree, 72% West African, Nigerian, Cameroon, Benin, Nigeria, the slave coast. And when we start to put these things together, the beauty of defining your own reality is because now I can implant any narrative that I want about my history. Because history is malleable. It's not fixed. And that is the misunderstanding about history. It's not a fixed marker. It's malleable. And it's written by the winners until that statement.
Until more details are exposed. Then the picture is drawn a lot more clear.
Until the lion learns how to read, every story will glorify the hunter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now we're saying we have something to add to the story, and we can reinterpret our history with the truth. And when you can't tell yourself the truth, you do yourself an injury. And our truth starts from this very fundamental idea is that we did not leave at the same day.
No.
You got 100-year head start on my family. If your family wasn't enslaved in the 1860 census, they have 150-year head start.
Right.
And then you got people with 150-year head start building generational wealth. And then you're looking at other black people who got the plantation last weekend, and you're looking at them like, why aren't you doing better?
Yeah. Yes. But now, okay, you want to pass that? Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So yeah, man, like, okay, so let's talk about that, right? So you got privileged black people versus black people who aren't as privileged, right? But we're talking about that in a lot of different ethnicities, but black people specifically, right? And I've always felt like I was privileged enough, right? Privileged enough to experience certain things and be certain places, but also not privileged enough to sit on that line and be able to experience not getting what I think I should, based on a social economical situation or race. I don't know. You had to deal with that growing up. And, if you lived in a world where, a quick update, like my mom was damn near, she was about, God, I hate to say assimilation, but I cannot say it wasn't like I think black women are more susceptible sometimes to assimilation because of survival, right? And so this is what ends up happening in corporate America. Saw it, right? Like all you need is a structure like this: a black woman, a white woman, black woman, and then like some white guy in that order, right? That is like the power structure to have. And I sat in it, like coming into an organization. I'm like, holy shit, you could not move a message in here if you wanted to, right? Because you got the black woman who you understand. She's like, oh, I'm just doing my job. And even if she's creative, the white woman is going to filter her stuff up to her black boss, who her black boss is just like the younger black lady, but just older and more conditioned, indoctrinated. And even though she has the influence and education and ability, she knows it's so much more tiring to try to fight the power, right? And then you got a light-skinned black or white boss who is just a complete company man and getting paid to sell his dreams, right? And so when I think about the dynamics of all these different perspectives, right? The ancestors of all those people, right? Like, I was talking to a friend of mine, a white lady, and she said, older white lady, and she said, I remember I had a black principal, and he was just like any old other principal until his black friend came in one day, and I happened to be staying after school, like somehow, and that door, you know, the door was open. I don't know if he knew I was there, but when his friend came in, his whole language changed.
That Key and Peele skit.
Like, what up, my nigga? Oh shit, brother. Goddamn. I'm like,
hey,
code switching.
yes,
right.
Yeah,
and it's like this thing that I've recognized, unfortunately, is that people have to be in tune with their soul, right? Because when we think about our ancestors, we literally have a discussion about religion being we should be trusting our ancestors versus the religion that's taught to us spiritually, right? Like there are things that could split the conscience of a black individual from the ancestry to which you exist through two parents, right? Like you can have a parent that is on one path spiritually, religiously, right? And then you have this complete other parent that is just on a complete other path, right? And then as a child, you have to embrace both of those. And then so
because you are both of those.
And you are, but I mean, shit, if you don't get a chance to do it, fatherless home, right? You can become imbalanced, therefore creating a higher tendency of myopia, right? Like you're just gonna shit. That's why you see a lot of dudes locked up because they got their mama's emotions. A grown man with your mama's emotions are dudes in prison acting on their emotion, right? Because at the end of the day, a man and how a man moves versus a woman is going to be different. There, I segue back to the conversation about the black man and black women in certain situations. And a black man is only going to be kept to certain power dynamics unless he shows that he is of that particular organization, almost to the point where you got to sell your soul, right? Like, how far do you got to get? Hey, big ups to my people still serving. But I've always said, like the higher you get, especially enlisted, you got to be selling your soul, man, because they want people who gonna do what they want, man. Like if your EPR even reads like you're a disruptor, you might not get nowhere.
Man, you being real traumatic to me right now, man.
How long you been in the Air Force?
What's that?
How long you been in the Air Force?
It'll be 18 years.
What's your FSC?
3F2. Training.
You're a training manager?
Yes, sir.
What squadron?
I'm at headquarters.
Oh, you big time.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, man.
okay.
This is. I feel like I've been targeted.
you been. Hey, no, it's called Vector.
Yeah,
Vector.
no, I'm talking about Kelvin. What Kelvin said. I feel like he's targeting me right now. That's a flagrant foul.
Hey, but you said it though, because when he said that, it wasn't until I got out. It wasn't until I retired that I understood what the process of the military does. Because when I learned that the same way they ran the plantation is how they run military bases, it's built on the same construct. Specialization, only know your job, stay in your lane. CE, don't talk to com don't talk to fire. Everybody stays in their lane. And if this, maybe sometimes support group can get together because we all support group, but we ain't going to med because we don't do med stuff. And that is how you can compartmentalize data so that nobody sees the whole picture except for the brass. And I believe as you move up the ranks, and I was talking to Young about this. I said, to understand the black conservative in America, you must first understand why would a black person want to conserve anything here? What about here do you think you should conserve? Because our ancestors live in this ground. We bury our ancestors here. This is just as much our land because we paid for it with our blood. And so I think that when you start looking at the military, it was the first way after the Civil War that allowed upward mobility to black people. But one of the things that I've learned, and this is what they confused him, he said you can't use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. But if I control reality, then I will say they're not the tools don't belong to the master. The tools are truth. The tools are universal and can be used by anyone. That's why they don't want you in the room. That's why they don't want you as a black person with a Ph.D. because you can go into a room that you can't get into without it. Because now, if you want to invalidate my scholarship because I got it from your approval, if you invalidate my scholarship, then you rebuke your own credential.
Yep.
You have to submit your own. And that is why the GI Bill was denied to black people when they got out of World War II. Because if you train them and educate them to think, they're going to ask questions about their conditions here. Because the white PhD researchers ain't studying black trauma.
Hey,
they ain't studying the impacts of what their ancestors did to you. Now, don't get me wrong, some do. But the percentage that do is not like black people, because when you ask black researchers, what do black researchers research? You research the most pressing issue that you see facing yourself. I'm not going to research anything that doesn't involve what I'm going through.
We're going to go through a black history lesson right here, because that's exactly why we have medical breakthroughs now.
Bruh.
That's why. Let's go through open heart surgery. Black man. Why? Because we needed that service. We weren't getting that service from anywhere else. We had to learn on our own. We had to innovate.
Yeah. And more importantly, when you start to see that despite, and this is the testament, I would say the greatest testament to black people in America is that we're still here.
And you said the word spite.
In spite of all we've been through, we're still here. That is probably the core power behind the drive. Is spite. Yeah, still here.
Yes.
Still here.
I'm still resilient because I'm not gonna let this get me down.
But that's the pent up tension that this country sits with because of the amount of energy put into the oppression of black people. And the problem is this, all right? Science tells us that energy is not destroyed. It is merely displaced. And so at the end of the day, where is all that energy? I'm gonna tell you where it is. It's locked up in special places for shit to pop off, like at Montgomery, right? Because ain't nothing like the training of motherfuckers getting jumped to kick in just like it did. Because every single thing that I've seen the motherfuckers getting jumped on kicked in. I said, oh, there go, bruh. You know, once you start skipping, it's over. Once old boy get like that, once old girls were dragging her, I said, oh, she finna throw her in the rip. Oh, they got her. It was
once you pull up your pants.
And he said something that was important, because when I listened to our that PragerU thing yesterday, because see, I like to listen to the arguments that my opposition is creating.
Right.
I listen to their arguments so that I can address them correctly. And when they make arguments to downplay or minimalize our struggles here, I tell them this. I said, yes, black people enslaved black people, but guess what? They kept their name. They kept their culture. They kept their territory. Hell, and when they were enslaved, they could even rise to levels in the enslavement where they were at. They could become leaders and warriors, and they would fight for them. And they didn't understand that you were in their family. And we say, well, and I'm like, well, they didn't do chattel slavery. You were a person there. And when you conflate what happened there to here, it's such an injustice because it just signifies the ignorance. And the last thing I will say is this, and this is what I've been working on. The boys called it the double consciousness of black man. We have two consciousness. We are not African and we are not European.
Right.
We're like a hybrid. We are a mixture. But I submit to you, there can only be one voice in your head at a time. Mm-hmm. So I have to reconcile my Afrocentricness with European value, but that don't work. And the reason it don't work is because I told the guy before, I said, in Africa, we didn't use a prison system. We didn't have a word for prison. They didn't lock you up. They didn't believe in African culture that you benefited by segregating a criminal from society. They thought it made you worse. So we didn't do that. Prison is a European concept. But if you ask somebody right now, what are you going to do with deviant people in society? Put them in prison, because we only have the Eurocentric mentality. And the Eurocentric mentality is cage the offender and segregate, isolate them from the rest of the non-deviant people. But yes, anybody can become deviant because injustice breeds insanity. I'm going to say that one more time. The longer you have to deal with injustice, it will breed insanity. You will lose your mind because you have to reconcile, why don't I see what you are saying? You're telling me that we've made progress, but I don't see it. And now what you're making me do is you're making me resort back to my ancestors and my Afrocentric side, because I understand that, to your point about religion, I cannot worship a God that allows you to treat me the way you do. We have to disconnect from you. And we don't understand that the black church in America is taught with white ideology. We don't teach black liberation in our churches. We teach, well, wait till the sky to crack and Jesus to come back and get your salvation. Don't worry about being poor here. You're going to be rich in heaven. Well, that's a great argument if I'm rich now, because ain't nobody rich talking about going to heaven. And Elon Musk ain't waiting to go meet nobody in heaven because he good. He got his blessings now. And we have been so conditioned to think if I'm struggling, I'm doing it for God. If I'm getting abused, I'm doing it for God. And that mentality is what they wanted us to think. Because if you go to Haiti, Toussaint Louverture was a Catholic, and he led the Haitian Revolution. And what Toussaint said was, I don't believe that the God that I'm reading about in this book would allow you to treat me this way. And until we make that fundamental distinction, that we cannot coexist, and that's why the only reason there's a black church in America and a white church in America is because of racism. There would be no AME church if there wasn't for racism. They would have been Methodists, but the Methodists said you can't sit in my pew in here, and we were like, wait a minute, I thought we were good in Christ. No, I'm the master, you're the servant. And so when we break that shackle, that bind, what we're going to find is that there are answers in the Afrocentric mentality. There is no dual consciousness, but we're seeing that the challenge that we're seeing is we have to raise our children in a world where European values are dominant. We have to raise them in a culture so they can be prepared to do what they're going to deal with. Because like I tell people, we training our children to assimilate into society. And in that family in Montgomery was training their children to kill ours. See, you psychologically don't understand where you're at, because if they're being taught, conditioned to kill your children, and you're teaching your children to integrate in their school, you're going to be slaughtered. And I think that that's the problem that we're running into, is that you can't keep punching me in the head and think I'm just going to be like, okay. Eventually, somebody's going to swing back, and we swing. And
you can get hit in the head with a chair.
Yeah, but we're swinging back, not with our fists. We're swinging back by deconstructing their arguments, because I first need to know, why was this argument made? Why did I need to be subhuman in your mind? I needed to be subhuman in your mind so that you didn't feel any conviction when you abused me. Because if my cow can't sleep at night, I don't care what the cow's going through. I don't.
And that's
care.
where the education comes from, because now you're using that critical thought to challenge the conventional theories.
Yeah, and their reality.
Well, all you have to do is be put in that situation. The Stanford experience tells you that all you have to do is be put in a position of power for a short amount of time. Like there are experiments with third graders that say, "Hey, let's play the eye test game. We're going to play the eye color game, right? Everybody who has blue eyes are the dominant, right? And so everybody who has brown eyes, they're the subculture." Right, like they can get treated. You can't do this, you can't do that. And then once everybody is real comfortable, they flip it, and they say, "Oh, today the brown." And then all of a sudden, these third graders understand what prejudice is like, right? And so these are taught things that can be untaught, right?
Yeah.
By purposely breaking the selfish individualism that we go through because of moral stage of development, just based on the human experience, period.
Raising awareness or waking them up to that situation, those conditions, those theories.
We're talking about our kids, or we're talking about
in general?
Well, it's one of those multifaceted, like attempts. Like, hey, I'm talking to you. You're talking to your children, right? You're having conversations with your boss, trying to make sure you don't kill him. You're talking to your neighbor, trying to make sure they don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these different jugglings of balancing your African experience in the Eurocentric world to the point where everything, but from a Eurocentric standpoint, everything's based on fear. Everything's based on fear in the breadwinner perspective, right? Because the European mindset is to get land, right? Like own, produce, and have your own for your legacy and whoever benefits you. And that comes at any cost. And that has been with the history.
Yeah, because Europe, if you've been to Europe, you've been to probably Europe. Europe doesn't have any natural resources.
Right.
It's scarce. Correct. So if I take people in an environment where resources is scarce, then they're going to murder each other for the resources.
Right. Like, and it's normal.
And more importantly, the problem with thinking that you are superior than somebody means there's nothing you think you need to learn. White people don't think they have things to learn from us when it comes to perceptions, the reality, because ultimately what they can do is they can retreat into what the most prominent thinkers of their day thought. Because if you know why the argument was created, then you can deconstruct it when it's no longer valid. So when you say Black people benefited from slavery, okay, whose perception is this? All right, because let me tell you, if I talk to 10 to 12 people in a homogenous group and I ask them a question, I won't get new data after the 12th person.
Right.
I won't get any new data. I will eventually just keep getting the same responses. Eventually, if I ask enough people.
That's
but because it has to be a homogenous group. So if I'm talking to Black males, I'm going to get a whole different response if I'm talking to Black females, as opposed to if I'm talking to white females. I'm going to get a different response because ultimately I don't know how you perceive the world.
That's what perspective is, though.
Well, because I'm talking about the idea that being racist actually makes sense if you think about it critically. Because if we're going to do identity politics, if we're going to do group identity, well, what's the largest group in this country? What? And so therefore, my group versus your group, well, you're going to lose because I have a bigger group than you. This is why it has to be idea-based, which is why I don't care if there's a Black leader. I don't care if there's a Black mayor, a Black governor, whatever. Because if you are Black, listen, if every white person in the world was gone tomorrow, boom, we still have white supremacy. We'd still have white supremacy if there were no white people, because we don't know what it is to live without it. We would just continue to reproduce it. And it's in our form. We would be as oppressive. We would be as cruel, because what you have to understand is that power does corrupt. And the purpose of education is how to handle power. Because if I educate somebody, but don't tell them how to handle the power that comes with the education, not only will they ruin their credibility, what they're going to do is they're going to fight battles that have already been fought. I'm not going to litigate with you what it was or did not mean for a black person to be enslaved here with any white person. I will not have a conversation with you about that, because first off, you're biased. You are not only are you biased, but you don't understand what you're saying. First off, you wasn't there. And more importantly, this is what the slave master said. That ain't what the slave narrative says. That ain't what they were saying. I didn't read one slave narrative where they said they benefited from the skills that they got while they were enslaved. You know why? Because if they could benefit from their skills, they probably wasn't enslaved that long.
Right.
The myth that black people were leased out and come back when they wanted to is hard to reconcile with the idea that this was frowned upon in the South. It was frowned upon in the South because they said if you give black people independence to make their own money, it will empower them. And that is why we only have 4% of this nation's wealth. 4%. We have less wealth now than we had in 1954 before Brown was decided. We have less wealth. And how do we have less wealth if we made progress?
Let's talk about something, Doc. Real quick. Let's talk about there's this book called White Trash, like 400-year history of like white people. But it was specifically talking about the development of, the states, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And, with Florida being Spanish owned at that time, right? It was talking about the different type of mentalities of these particular states, right? So Virginia being, it was kind of affluent. They wanted tobacco, right? And they had, George Washington, John Adams type stuff. So some of the elite forefathers and stuff, right? And North Carolina was just a trash place where they dumped British and English, just trash, right? They literally got these people out of England and dumped them in North Carolina. And then South Carolina was more like traditional colonial England, right? So Virginia was the place where the new age thinkers were, but South Carolina were more of the traditional, like where John Locke was in contact with them. And so they're thinking like, oh yeah, this is old time stuff here. That's why there were so many slaves in South Carolina versus the slave owners, right? And then Georgia, based on like John Oglethorpe, was more of the freeman state where the white man was using his family, right? Like for every slave, you can use your wife and your son, right? So it was building more of an independent complex away from the slave. But at the same time, certain black people, I'm sure it came up, and then it became prominent enough to where you have shit like Lake Lanier in Georgia, and you have where the Ku Klux Klan became probably the most prominent, Stone Mountain, where, we go there and we go visit, and it's such a grand old gay time, right? But where this was the damn headquarters because of how the freedmen got damn jealous of the damn free black man.
Yeah. Well, look, so interesting numbers here. If you go back prior to Bacon's Rebellion in the 1670s, enslaved people were marrying white women. They were marrying them because there was no prohibition against it, and they were having children with them, even if they were enslaved. And so much so that because there's always a jealousy component to racism, because if I can't get what I want by my charm and my wit, I can get it by my legislation. I can just outlaw you doing what's going to hurt my competition, because Rockefeller said it the best. competition is sin. Because the ideas that we are coming across now are so powerful, because what we are seeing is, we know the history, check. What we need is a process to validate or invalidate ideas quickly, so that we can progress them through our ideas, so that we're not relitigating stuff that's stupid. We're not fighting stupid ideas, and we're not saying like, okay, you tell me your idea for Black people in America, you tell me your idea, and I'll tell you my idea. Now now once we tell each other ideas, what we'll say is that, do your ideas encompass mine, or vice versa? How can we reconcile our ideas so that you a Hebrew Israelite, he a Muslim, I do Buddhism, he's Islamic, but you Black. And as long as you Black, we need to be solidarity, because our enemy don't care what religious faith you are. And more importantly, this idea that we are trying to establish our own reality. And I say that, and the only reason that I say that is because when one of the reason that this is important is because let me show you this. You see this book?
DSM-5, yes, sir. I have it on my computer.
Now, this book classifies if you are in your right mind or not. It classifies if you are in your right mind or not. And what we find out is Black people are often misdiagnosed, because, great example, prior to 1908, there was no diagnosis for schizophrenic. The term schizophrenic was diagnosed in 1908, right? But did the phenomenon start there? No.
Of course not.
The phenomenon of schizophrenic behavior primarily started in Black women first. When their child was sold from them, they would be having conversations with their child as if they were still there. They would essentially lose touch with reality. It would create psychosis, and most of them were no good after that. And what they would do is, and this is why they create the term drapetomania, meaning if you wanted to be free, it was a mental illness. It meant something was wrong with your mind. Black folks like to wander, because if slavery is such a great institution, and if it's so beneficial and we learn it so much, well, why are people running away? What they running away for if they got it so good? They running away because it's hell. And the ones that realized it's hell ran and never came back. And one of the things that I'm seeing happen is when we start to dissect mental issues in this country, like if you're Black and you are intelligent, you will be an uppity Negro. Oh, you think you smart. Oh, what, you think you a lawyer? You know what I mean? They've already pre-programmed the response, so that now that if I get upset, if I disagree with you, I have oppositional defiance disorder.
Yeah.
Because I disagree with you, I'm oppositional. Well, your idea is stupid. But if I control what is or is not to be sane, to be reality, to be rational, if I control that, all I have to do is say, you
are crazy.
You lost. He's insane. Why? Because a sane person would be happy that they got released from all that voodoo in Africa, and we brought you here, and we gave you Jesus, and I'm like, bruh, you ain't a saint. But
gaslighting.
It is. But to your point, it's cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
It's cognitive dissonance because our realities cannot coexist.
And so enter PTSD. Enter, you know, yeah. PTSS, right? Like, well, and so this is one of those moments where I feel like we have to talk about time, right? Because we only have a certain amount of time. Like even right now, like I feel like I could continue to go, right? But I feel like we got to wrap up in 5 minutes. I mean, it is what it is, and we can continue to go if we want to after this. But time is always of the essence. But time is more valuable than money, right? And so the American distraction is always wrapped in time. Because what I've noticed is people don't even have the time to have the discussion about anything, right? Like right now, like we just taken almost 2 hours to talk about some stuff, and we've been all over the place, but it's been great dialogue to sharpen the iron, right? But it's just a drop in the bucket because we gotta get up, you gotta go somewhere. I'm right now, you know what I mean? Right now, I'm not no flex. Like I put myself in a position where I'm gonna take some time to focus on me and, you know, get the education and maybe come back out, reinvent it. And I know how to do that because the military has taught us how to do that, right?
Yeah.
So this time that I thought I was gonna be maybe higher ranking enlisted, I'm not, but I'm still trying to get a higher ranking on life by elevating myself in multiple ways, including educationally, for even the mere fact that in case somebody want to ask me, yes, you know what I mean? Like if the doctor has to be thrown up there, let it be, right? You know what I mean? And so, but these are things to cover multiple. These are things to be heroes in your community. These are things to be a thorn in some pompous asshole side. These are all things that we want, and there's a system of thinking that we always got to think about. There are multiple things going on, man. Like as I sit here talking about the Black pride that I have, I know I exist in this world with white people that I need them to understand that there's not a hate, there's just a lack of understanding going on, and you can even see that in relationships. And you can always make the analogy of just a regular relationship. It's like an abusive relationship. You just get sick of that shit. Yeah. You get sick. You get sick of it. Like at some point in time, you cannot ignore the abuse. You can't ignore the gaslighting. You can't ignore the physical abuse. You can't ignore the financial abuse, right? Like, come on, man. Like you're asking me to go outside and drive on a road where I could potentially, I mean, and all these things exist, but potentially be pulled over by a cop that could maybe want to take me out when they used to protect and serve, but they don't even put that shit on cars anymore. Right? And it's like they're literally telling us, right? But we don't give them, we give them every reason to say fuck it. Because everybody's done, man. You can't even get people to do the job properly anymore because people are suffering from ethical exhaustion. And I'm going to add, being of color, ethnic exhaustion because of the actual code switching that you have to do in life to just win your bread, because the European mindset has told you that that's what life's about, because everybody has the threat of being out on the street, and they purposely let homeless people walk around to show you what the hell it could be if you don't get in line properly. And they even do it for vets. Yeah, that's the worst thing you can see is a vet on the side of the road. It's like, hold on, bro, did what? You say you got your leg blown off, you can't do what? Yeah. Right? And so you have all these deterrents to say, stay in line, stay in line, stay in line. And so the cognitive dissonance comes in, fighting and dying for what you believe in, or just staying in line like a good slave. Because I'm going to tell you like this, and I'm going to say it clear before we get off of here. We are all slaves to something.
Whatever masters you.
Kill your masters is what I say. And then Killer Mike is where I got that from, and LP, so I can't steal it, but it makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, man.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Hey, man, gaining one's definition. Right. I heard that from a very smart man yesterday. Intelligent
definition.
Dr. Ham, we were talking. But I always say you got to keep the L in God, right? So gaining one's definition, meaning God, right? And then I say you can't be God, so you got to be gold. You got to keep the L in, right? Life, leadership, love. And that's what my squared away leadership theory is going to be about. The OA perspective and approach, man, the art and science, capturing it, man. And that's what this is on Objectively Aggressive. 2 hours in.
Boom.
We're out here.